The briefing will begin in 2 minutes. For the journalists joining us in the digital press room, if you'd like to ask a question, you can click the Raise Your Hand button. When you are called upon, we will unmute your microphone, and you also will have to unmute your own microphone.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for quite a special update. Extraordinary, really, when you think about where we started and where we are today. And that's just what this press conference is an update on where we are in the process. Still have a few more hurdles to clear, but there's a high level of confidence that we're going to not just be on schedule, but ahead of schedule with a budget that we can all be proud of for the next 2 years that will fund our shared priorities, that among the administration and the Senate and of the House. And you'd have to not be paying attention to have missed that we have had several recent economic indicators that point to Indiana's vibrancy and point to Indiana's engine of growth that has put us in this pole position and has enabled the state of Indiana to make key investments in our future and where we want to arrive at in 2030, 2040. We're going to make those investments now. I think that we are living in a rare time and place and space, and we're going to seize the day, and you're going to see that reflected in this budget. This budget truly is transformational. It's transformational when it comes to investments we're going to make in people first and foremost, obviously our state's greatest asset. It's going to allow people not just to have more hope than ever, but it's going to help them realize new opportunities in their lives. This budget is going to not just invest in people, but it's going to invest in the platform of which we all rest upon, our infrastructure foundation. And we're going to be able to fund some mega transformational infrastructure projects that some of which we've talked to, some of which have been blueprints for years now. We're going to be able to realize them. This budget is going to invest like at no other time collectively in our local communities. When I think about what's contained in this budget, the locals should love it. Because it's giving them more resources and partnering with them in ways that will yield great results. It's also going to help our state, which occupies high ground right now in terms of the competition. It's also going to help us accelerate away from 2020 at a faster pace, increasing that momentum as we continue to reinvest in Hoosiers themselves. I think if one word stands out over this last 4 months to me, it's collaboration. That's always been a Hoosier hallmark. but the collaboration that has occurred over 4 months to get to this day, I just want to say thank you to Speaker Houston, to Senator Bray, on behalf of the Lieutenant Governor, to Doc Brown, to Senator Mishler, to all the members and leaders that had a hand in this budget. Again, one that we can be proud of. So I not only thank you, but I salute you on a job well done. Obviously, there's been a lot thrown at us over the last 4 months, over the last year, but to your credit, you haven't been distracted. We've been focused, kept our eye on the ball, and we've been advancing. And that's not a claim that every state or nation can make around the world. So on behalf of 6.7 million Hoosiers, we're going to make some transformational investments, and I thank you for really not just giving us the blueprints, but giving us the resources as an administration to go out there and get this done, roll our sleeves up and get to work. Obviously, over the coming days and the coming weeks, we'll have more updates. If you're staying up, pulling an all-nighter, digging through the budget tonight, really combing through it, you're going to see first and foremost that this is our 9th straight. This is a streak, truly balanced budget, providing certainty for folks that want to make their way of life here in the state of Indiana. We're going to be funding education at an all-time record high level, investing $1.9 billion in new dollars to education over this next 2-year period. This budget's going to invest in our workforce development program, something that's critically important here in a state that ranks #1 in manufacturing per capita in the whole country. We're going to be able to reinvest and skill up people who may be unemployed, underemployed, or simply people that are looking for a different and better career. We have the resources that are made available because of this budget to help you do just that. We're also going to be investing in pipeline workforce development programs right out of school. So if you've got your heart set and your mind set on going right into a career coming out of high school, we're going to be able to fund that with the resources necessary to be your partner on that front as well. We also, something I'm particularly proud of, this is turned into the Indiana way, but we're paying down debt and avoiding future debt that will save us some interest dollars as well to free up dollars for other worthy programs. So when the rain does come, we're in an even stronger position. So back to that carpe diem, seizing the day, seizing our position of strength right now by paying down debt and those liabilities. This also, as I briefly alluded to, equips our administration, those public servants that so proudly go to work every single day. You've gotten to know them over this last year, maybe better than ever, but it's going to equip, whether it's the Department of Health or our family over at the FSSA or the ISP or the DOC or the DWD or IoT, DNR. It's going to help us serve the public and not just meet needs, but provide a great service at a great value. This budget does that. And don't forget, it's often lost. We often kind of gloss over this, but our state corporate income tax is being cut right now from 5.25 to 4.9%. During all this, we've maintained our AAA state credit rating, and we're at the pre-pandemic levels for our reserves. So that is, again, something that just strengthens our case when we're out recruiting and growing here at home. There are a lot of folks around the world who may be waking up every day and looking in the rearview mirror, anchored to that pandemic that I just referred to and the negative effects of what that brought about. Indiana's different. We are focused on the future, and we are now prepared to build what kind of state we want to be in 2030, as I said at the outset, or 2040. So we have long-term vision and the resources behind it to realize in every corner of our state, small town, big city, every corner of our state can help realize their dreams, put them into action. And I'll just give you one example that's near and dear to me, and then I'll turn it over to Speaker Houston and to Senator Bray and Lieutenant Governor Crouch. we'll call it Exhibit A of the Indiana Way. And I hope it's not lost on anyone when you're staying up late, pulling an all-nighter, coming through the budget, that there is a bonanza program called it's the Ready Grants. It's the successor to its predecessor, the Regional Cities Initiative. This, again, will have a positive impact on every community that seeks to see itself as larger than itself, to become part of a region. It's READI, R-E-A-D-I, the Regional Economic Accelerator Development Initiative. That's a mouthful, so we'll just say get ready for the future. The READI Grant Program. It is state-funded at $500 million, just to pull one item out of this budget, $500 million. Recall, Regional Cities was originally funded at $126 million. It was it turned out to be $120 million. It yielded, threw off, because of partnerships locally, $1.22 billion. So just imagine for a second, $500 million times 10. Think about $5 billion worth of investment all over the state of Indiana, statewide, simultaneously, over this next 5 years. Imagine $5 billion in 5 years in your hometown, in your home region, in our home state. Obviously, that's going to go a long way in making sure communities aren't just surviving, but we're thriving and we're attracting talent and maintaining the talent that we're grooming. It's also, this budget locally is going to fully fund our roads and bridges program. It's going to also, it's already baked into the budget, our community crossings program. That's another $100 million coming up this summer that's going into local communities, small towns, larger communities as well. $60 million in this budget for trails. $25 million in this budget. Ryan Mishler is a tough negotiator, but $25 million is in there, the last time I looked at it, for land acquisition, for land preservation, to conserve our natural and our unique, special, beautiful landscapes throughout the state of Indiana. So we're really excited about that. And then, obviously, I'll look to the Lieutenant Governor to passionately to describe another advancement that we've made in terms of broadband internet. But I just mentioned those few as examples of what is going to be occurring on the ground, again, statewide, simultaneously. And so it puts the pressure on us to make sure that we're having those resources that we've allocated to skilling up our workforce and attracting a whole lot more. And with that, I will turn to Speaker Houston for your thoughts on our progress.
Well, thank you, Governor Holcomb, and it's great to be part of this exciting announcement today. In Indiana, we get things done for Hoosiers, and a big part of that is due to the solid working relationship between the governor and the House and the Senate. And you've seen the positive impacts of that today. And it began with the leadership, Governor, you've shown over the last year that put us in a position to make this exciting announcement today. Today's budget reflects Hoosiers' priorities, which means making strategic investments, but not growing government. Our conservative spending levels will also provide opportunities for future tax cuts and other reforms that we look forward to having those discussions over the next year or two. We'll pay down over $1 billion in taxpayer-funded debt, including about $600 million towards the pre-1996 teachers' pensions. So we're investing and making sure we invest and teachers know their pensions are secure for years to come. In addition, our two-year state budget is a historic win for Hoosier students, teachers, and families. In total, we increased K-12 spending by $1.9 billion over the biennium, a record investment. In year two, the new budget will provide $600 million in additional funding to public schools annually. This investment fulfills and exceeds the Next Level Teacher Pay Commission's recommendation for increasing teacher salaries. The budget also recommends schools set starting salaries at $40,000 a year for their first-year teachers and requires them to dedicate at least 45% of tuition support to teacher pay. These were recommendations that came directly out of the Teacher Pay Commission report. Our plan also includes substantial investments in expanding school choice in Indiana. We understand that Hoosier parents want to be in the driver's seat of their child's education. That's why our budget will open more doors to more families to find the best educational fit for their child by removing financial barriers. Through Educational Savings Account, we'll also provide more opportunities for special ed students that fit their unique needs. I'd like to thank Chairman Brown and Chairman Mishler, along with all of our fiscal teams, for working together to make this happen. I'll now turn it over to my friend, Senate Pro Tem Rod Bray, to talk about other significant investments.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, Governor, Lieutenant Governor. It's pleased to be with you, and I can tell you just how much I've enjoyed the collaboration over the last several weeks as we've moved through this session and tried to craft a budget that's going to work for the state of Indiana. And I can't tell you how big a day I think it is for the state of Indiana today as we can announce this budget right now. Over the last year, Hoosiers have proven that what we already knew, that Hoosiers are across the state a resilient folk. The resilience of Hoosiers paired with that sound fiscal policy has landed us, frankly, where we are today. And I imagine there are many other states in the nation that would love to be in the position that we find ourselves in right now. For more than a decade, conservative State House leadership has been exercising fiscal discipline while making meaningful investments in our priorities. Today, that decade of work is beginning to pay off for us. You've heard about the incredible investments we're making in a K through 12 education, $1.9 billion. That's billion with a B. And about more than $1 billion, again, with a B, in reducing state debt and taking care of our pension obligations. This is very good government. In addition to these two critical items, the budget also makes investments in Hoosiers from all walks of life. We're making record investments in Hoosier health and mental health, something that we particularly need right now. We will improve services to aging Hoosiers with $40 million increase for direct service providers. In this budget, we're supporting law enforcement with a raise for our state police, excise police, and DNR officials. And we're providing grants for small business recovery and, with, as the governor already mentioned, $500 million for the Regional Economic Development Accelerator initiative. And we can improve local economies and qualities of life across the state of Indiana. The budget also ensures that infrastructure needs that Hoosiers can and should expect from us will continue to get the best treatment. In fact, Indiana's already been ranked number one recently in that infrastructure, but we continue to invest in high-speed internet, clean water, well-maintained roads and interstates, and all are provided for well into the future. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't also thank my colleagues in the House, Speaker Houston, Representative Brown, as well as Senator Mishler in the Senate, who worked so hard to craft this budget, and finally the Governor and Lieutenant Governor for all the help that they've provided. The investments we're making today will leave our state's finances better than we found them. Rather than create future obligations, we are creating flexibility for years to come in our economy so that Indiana can continue to grow and thrive and create opportunities for all Hoosiers across Indiana. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Governor Holcomb for your leadership, President Pro Tem Bray, Speaker Houston, Chairman Brown, Chairman Mishler, and the entire General Assembly for continuing to make investing in broadband a priority for Indiana, further connecting Hoosiers to each other, to the nation, and to the world. In 2018, Purdue University released a study, said there were over 400,000 Hoosiers in internet darkness. And if they were all connected, it would result in an additional $12 billion over the next 20 years to Indiana's economy. So we've already invested $79 million connecting over 22,000 Hoosier families and businesses to be able to allow them to enjoy economic opportunity and quality of life. And what we learned during COVID is that being connected is no longer a luxury, it's an essential. As workers were teleworking, as our students were e-learning and as healthcare was being delivered telehealth. And so this historic $250 million investment in broadband is something that is going to continue to take Indiana to the next level. It's going to connect Hoosiers like they've never been connected before. And it's going to allow all Hoosiers to enjoy economic opportunity and the quality of life that our state offers. And for that, I'm very grateful. So thank you.
Thank you. Rachel, I can't see you, but I trust you're there. Why don't you tee up the questions?
You got it. Eric Berman, WIBC.
Afternoon, Eric.
Mr. Leader, Lieutenant Governor. Couple of questions. By my count, and correct me if I've missed something, by my count, there's $1.6 billion in the federal stimulus money included here. What is the plan, or how specific is the plan for the other $1.4 billion? Are those decisions to be determined? Do you have a general idea where that will go?
Yeah, I think all three of us could answer it in roughly the same way, but what we have first and foremost did is provide a lot of flexibility for, as the years unfold ahead or the months unfold ahead, we are both conservative and cautiously optimistic about where we'll be. That's why we've made these investments. But we've also carved off a portion that gives us even greater flexibility. And keep in mind, with that $3 billion and roughly cut in half, about 50% of that, we don't have final approval for. So we have to be cautious on that front as well. You might want to elaborate.
Eric, we did appropriate all $3 billion of those dollars. As the governor noted, we made sure there was flexibility, understanding that things might change, and those dollars obviously won't all be spent in this biennium. As the governor's noted in the past, the rules around that are that you have to they can spend up until 2024. So we did appropriate all those dollars, but we will have chances over the next 2 years to come back and make strategic changes based upon the recommendation of the administration and the General Assembly.
Caitlin with the Indianapolis Star.
Afternoon, Caitlin.
Afternoon. Education question for you. The budget does almost everything education-wise in the House and Senate proposals, and then some, but it doesn't keep the complexity increase and doesn't seem to address the idea of tying complexity to foundation so they rise at the same rate. Why not? And then just a separate topic, the $900 million for the next level connections money, was that included in the previous proposed budgets you guys had, or is that new?
Yeah, I'll take the second, or you want to take the first and then I'll follow up. But again, your second question that has been put into the budget allows us to, in the future, fund various infrastructure projects, but doesn't tie us down right now in the immediate. Again, this is an effort to be not just cautious, but to show that we got the dough as it stands today, and we've got various priorities down the line that if we get to, we'll be able to fund them. But we're taking because we had so much revenue, quite frankly, when that forecast rolled around and we went back to the drawing board, we wanted to make sure that we were investing in assets that would have a generational impact. That's why that infrastructure fund is there. But these aren't projects that we have to get to within the next month. You want to get to the foundational and tuition assistance?
Yeah, Caitlin, on complexity, we did raise complexity from the last budget. Chairman Brown and Chairman Mishler met kind of in the middle in the two budgets that were passed on House and Senate on complexity, but it did rise and rose in a way that I think was significant and the right balance. Obviously, Foundation supports all kids across Indiana, and it's always been a priority to make sure we increase that amount, but find the right balance in the investment in complexity too.
I'm going to elaborate on that just briefly if I could, and that's correct. The complexity has increased a little bit from the last budget, but the foundation has certainly increased noticeably. But the other thing that we focused on was special education and English language as a second learner, which I think will significantly help kids across the state, and that's a big piece of the complexity piece as well.
Abdul Hakim Shabazz, Indy Politics.
Afternoon, Abdul.
Good afternoon, Governor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A couple quick questions. First of all, can you guarantee that the money that you folks have budgeted will get to actually teachers and teacher pay? Number two, Senator Bray, this is for you. How did you get the Senate to change their mind on education savings accounts?
So first of all, Abdul, with regard to the question about how we make sure that gets to teacher pay, we talked about that a lot, and the teacher compensation report spent a lot of detail on that as well. And we've adopted basically three concepts that teacher compensation report had. First of all, we do not require the minimum salary to be $40,000. If the school doesn't have a minimum salary for their teachers at $40,000, they have to send in a report to the Department of Education to explain that circumstance so we can better understand why that is the case. It begins to highlight where we would like them to be. A second piece of that is that at least 45% of the tuition support to any particular school system is going to have to go into teacher salaries. And and I think, hopefully a lot of schools have a higher percentage than that, but at a minimum, and the teacher compensation report discussed this, that 45% would have to be into teacher salaries. And the third piece is that schools will, outside of some exigent circumstance, will not be able to drop their teacher salaries below the point that it was in the previous year. So that if the circumstance where a number of more experienced teachers retired, then obviously that salary might go down because that pay scale is lower. You got younger teachers who are making a younger salary. And there's sometimes a temptation for those dollars then to go elsewhere into the school's budget. This would help keep them in that teacher salary budget if you can't get lower than it was in the previous year. So those three things we think are going to be very helpful. We looked at that and I thought it was a thoughtful improvement or suggestion in the teacher compensation report. So we have adopted those, and we're hopeful that helps those dollars get into the classroom and get into the teachers' pockets where we really truly want them to be. And then with regard to your second question about how we convinced our caucus, there was some trepidation or hesitation with our caucus to advance into the vouchers to the point of 300%. But when we found ourselves in this circumstance, we're able to get where we needed to be with the public education dollars, and that helped open up this conversation for the vouchers. And so I think we feel like we found ourselves in a pretty good place.
Abdul, I would just draw your attention to what Senator Bray said. I think it's recommendation 30, 31, and 32 that gets at your points. And also, I'll just express my appreciation for the process, how it played out. You'll recall, Abdul, as I said at the State of the State address, that I hoped that these two ways of educating complement each other and don't compete, and that they were separate from one another. And that's where the House and the Senate both arrived. And I can't tell you how appreciative I am that, like you said, Speaker, that parents have options, but we're also following the Teacher Compensation Commission's report on these three fronts.
Rob with the Wabash Plain Dealer.
Good afternoon, Rob.
Good afternoon, Governor. How are you today?
It's a beautiful Tuesday, about to snow.
Indeed. It already is snowing here.
Oh.
So last week, Democratic Senator Eddie Melton offered several amendments to the bill, which would have raised the minimum wage, increased funding for food banks, and raised the cigarette tax to $1. I was wondering if this is really for anybody that wants to take it, might be able to explain why none of those amendments were deemed worthy of inclusion in the final version that was passed by the Senate.
So with regard to the food banks, there's money in there for some food desert effort here in Indianapolis that I think is a real good one that the Cook Corporation is involved in. And we're hopeful that that will serve as a nice pattern for how to kind of improve that in the future. And there's some money in the food banks as well. I can't remember right now exactly what what that number was, but certainly addresses those issues. And you may have had a third point that I guess I forgot. If you want to remind me, I'll try and answer it. What's that? Oh, the minimum wage. Well, that's just a philosophical difference that we don't necessarily share, honestly, I think of as a step in the right direction for our economy.
Nikki Kelly with the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette.
Yeah, Nikki, can I just respond to Rob as well on the minimum wage? We have maximum opportunity in the state of Indiana right now. We've got over 100,000 unfilled jobs posted, plus all the jobs that the IEDC, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, has been involved with in every region of our state that we need to fill. Those jobs come in at an average of $28 an hour and north of that. So our job is, we don't have the problem not having the jobs, and we don't have the problem not having the people. Our challenge, our charge is to make sure that we skill up the workforce to fill those jobs. And that's called a maximum paycheck. And it's there, and it's waiting. Nikki?
Hi, I have two very quick questions. First is, could you talk about the $500 million that's going to go into the state's unemployment fund and why we're doing that? And then also on the $500 million for the READY grants, how quickly do you want to get some of that money out? Are you hoping that some of that money will get out this year?
Yeah, two good questions, and I'll take a crack at both of them first, and then if you guys want to offer some additional perspectives. But Nikki, that gets us back after the May contribution, which is about, I think, 140. No, we're about at 140 right now balance, and then we'll get the biggest of the year contribution as normal, few hundred million, plus the 500 million. That gets us back to about pre-pandemic, the balance, something that we think is healthy and attractive and needed for the future. And follow up on that if you care to. The second question is, this is going to go through a scoring process just like the Regional Cities Initiative. And so I anticipate, when I said over the next 5 years, I probably should have qualified that, you called me out, that this we'll be out on the road seeking submissions and applications, providing a whole lot more guidance. Now that we know the numbers agreed upon, obviously that went to 3 different regions. That 126 went to 3 different regions. Northeast quadrant of our state had 11 counties. Some had 2 or 3 counties. So right now, regions of our state are forming up, and we want them to be able to self-select. So if your county wants to go north, south, east, west, or just expand and bring in the donuts around yourself, those things need to happen by a self-selection process. So there needs to be some time for that. Folks need to know that there's 500 million before it gets divided up. But there will be a scoring process that directly gets at population scarcity, those threats to our economy into the future, talent, recruitment, workforce development programs, whatever issue is holding your community back, how you can work together in your region. So I would say right now to be looking at the beginning of next year in terms of dollars going to individual regions. You want to follow up on either of?
The governor knows, and we've talked about the fact that this is a huge opportunity for IEDC, and we have a tremendous amount of confidence in the governor and his administration to make sure the program is done well, as I know it will be, and maximizes investments. I think the thing that most excites all of us is it's not just about that initial dollar amount that's provided, but as the governor noted, it's about maximizing private and philanthropic investments too. And I think, as we look around at this budget, it also provides opportunities. We're making investments in mental health. We're making investments in infrastructure. It ties a lot of things together that really allows us to take the READY grants and give regions of our state, as the governor noted importantly, this is a competitive aspect, but gives regions of our state really an opportunity to accelerate and grow at levels that we've never seen before. So, pressure's on the governor. He's willing to step up. I know he'll do a great job of getting these dollars out and getting it to those, and the deserving communities are ready to take off and do what's needed to really win this next decade for Indiana.
Yeah, I would also add, Nikki, I mean, the level of excitement about this program, I've just not seen it at the level that folks are chomping at the bit, getting their houses in order. And what we saw in regional cities is people erased lines, whether they were partisan lines or county lines or city lines, and really started to collaborate. And out of many one came in these different regions. And so now all of a sudden we have the case to be made, and you can go to the IEDC website right now, and you can look at the kind of the Fort Wayne region, what they did. And again, that's 11 counties, so it says regional cities, but it's cities, towns, suburbs, or you can go to the South Bend region, or you can go to the Evansville region. I think the Evansville region, their conversion ended up being about 26 million, equated to 563 million when you put in the stakeholders' skin in the game. And so that's what it can do. And when you go visit those communities, you can just see the difference pre-regional cities and post. And so that's what we're looking. There's going to be a lot of dust flying, a lot of construction. That's another one of our sectors in Indiana that's going to be working double shifts because there's so much work to be done.
Brandon Smith, Indiana Public Broadcasting.
Afternoon, Brandon.
Afternoon, Governor. Afternoon, Senator, Speaker, and Lieutenant Governor. Two questions. First, on the 45% mandate to spend on teacher salaries, do we have any sense of where we are now, what percentage schools are spending now, and why go with a mandate after all these years? That's my first question. My second is, there were differences between the House and the Senate on how to do the vaping tax. What is the final product on the vaping tax, and why did you go with that, whatever that formula is?
So with regard to the vaping tax, we have gone with kind of a bifurcated system where there'll be, if you're a closed system, it'll be a wholesale price. And if you have a open system, which is a different kind of a vaping product, it'll be a retail price. We tried to put that in a position where the tax rate was comparable for the two of them, and that's where we landed, as it seemed that in that industry that seemed to make the most sense and was most efficient for them. And with regard to the first question, which was 45%. Yeah, with regard to the 45%, again, it comes out of the teacher compensation report, and it's an effort. I think that you'll find. I couldn't tell you right now where all the school districts are across the state, but I think you'll find that most are normally maybe even a good bit over that 45%. But at least if you can get there, then you know that a good bit of the dollars, 45% of those tuition support dollars, are going into the teacher pay, which is where we want it to be.
Brandon, first of all, on the vaping, is basically Senate passed, so that might be the easier way to say it or to acknowledge it. On the tremendous give by the House, but no. On the 45%, look, we did a lot in 2019, and we saw that schools did raise teacher pay. I think just less than a handful didn't give teachers significant salary increases. We anticipate, and that will be the case this time too. But the 45%, those three recommendations the governor mentioned that came out of the teacher compensation report, they really stood out to us. I reviewed some numbers over the weekend. A lot of schools are there. Other schools need to get there. We just took the exact language out of the teacher compensation report, which is agreed to by a whole number of stakeholders that were put together. So we feel like it's the right blend. We've been conscientious as a former school board member myself, and we do support local control. This is an important time for schools. I'll just say this, because we're making a significant investment. We expect it to be in teacher pay, and we'll be watching closely. It feels like a lot of the pressure on teacher pay has been directed at this building. We've stepped up. Now it's time for locals to step up, because we don't really want to be more prescriptive, but with the type of investments we're making, if it doesn't get the teacher pay, we might just have to be.
Yeah, and I would also say, just to take a moment to thank Mike Smith, to thank the entire commission, but the work that went into that report was both thorough and thoughtful, and it was extremely helpful before the forecast and especially after the forecast, when we started to see just exactly what we could do. And so thanks to the whole commission, obviously we pulled 3 out that could be implemented right now. There are other good ideas in the report that I'll be paying close attention to in the years ahead.
Tom Davies, The Associated Press.
Afternoon, Tom.
Hello, everyone. I have a couple questions. The first one is, what role did the $3 billion in the federal recovery funds play in making these budget decisions? Did that make this increased school spending possible by allowing you to have the state money to cover so many grant programs and construction projects?
Well, it was a whole lot more money than we had to deal with, but you might want to talk about the thought process with the schools in the House and the Senate.
Yeah, I think, Tom, the answer to that question is that, obviously we appropriated and we put it into one-time uses. It's one-time dollars. It's funding infrastructure. It's funding the readiness grants. It's doing those types of things that are making investments in our community. Frankly put, the leadership of the governor, the financial shape of the state, the dollars that are being invested in education, those are state dollars. Those are dollars that came from the improved revenue forecast that we received a week ago. So those are state dollars that we were both surprised and but pleasantly on the amount of money. And again, we've always said that a goal of ours, a very important goal of ours, that 50% of the dollars in the state budget go to education. That's what we're doing again this time. We've always said that the priority to us is K-12 education. It shows in our budget every single time, and it shows again this time.
And Tom, I think you have another question, but we wanted to make sure anything we did this year was sustainable. And so that's our fiscal picture, and this is what we were able to commit to. Do you have a second question?
Yeah, the other question is about, you've all expressed hesitancy about making long-term commitments in state money. So what's your reasoning behind supporting the size of the school voucher expansion and opening the door on the education savings accounts?
You might have to elaborate. We're all committed to good education,
Well,
which comes in various forms. And we wanted to make sure that traditional or public education was appropriately funded at the appropriate level. We believe it is. We also believe that parents should have options and choices, and we funded that at what we believe is a reasonable level.
Meredith with WLFI.
Good afternoon, Meredith.
Good afternoon, everyone. So you had mentioned when it comes to the voucher program that you're removing financial barriers. I know that in the House and the Senate, there was a disagreement on what that salary cap was going to be for a family of 4 to qualify for a voucher program. So I'm wondering if you went with I think it was around 150,000 in the House, 95,000 in the Senate. Have you made a decision on that, or?
Oh, yeah. You want to give the update? Sure. I mean, I think you should feel comfortable talking about the outcome.
Well, it's, again, this is a issue in which there may look like on disagreement on paper, but, very collaborative process. But we went House passed the 300%, and, we're excited about giving more opportunities to families to make choices and get to, we all love our public schools. Public school, former school board member, public school grad, but we think it's important that families have options. It's been a tremendously successful program for the last decade. We think it'll continue to be a successful program moving forward for even more families. So House passed, but it was very, very friendly conversations with Senator Bray, Senator Mishler, and obviously appreciate the support of Governor Holcomb.
Yeah, and I would just say that this building is based on consensus and a 4-month period during a budget, and you don't all start in the same place. But when you're talking about a $38.6 billion budget, you can't expect everybody to start in the same exact place on every single issue. But we all, I think, arrived at a place that we're all very comfortable with.
Whitney with CNHI.
Good afternoon, Whitney.
Good afternoon.
You sound like you have a question about broadband internet for the Lieutenant Governor.
Actually, I have a question about schools and nursing homes. So I'm sorry, Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah.
My first question is on schools. Just do we know exactly how much of the tuition support increase is being used by vouchers?
Well,
I didn't hear that.
so the tuition support increase, what we did was, I'm sorry, was your question about the tuition support increase by vouchers? So we run a school formula, but what we did was we made sure that in the tuition support, we matched up, even if, and we took what's called legislative service agencies numbers, but when we matched up, we made sure that we met the teacher pay commission report recommendation, whether there was an expansion of the voucher program or not. So we even doubled back to make sure that was the case. So when our funding formula runs come out later tonight, you will be able to see specifically what the exact dollar amount that again, these are all estimates about what will go to vouchers. But again, we fully funded the teacher pay commission for public education.
And I know Dr. Dan isn't there, but I wanted to ask specifically about the Medicaid reimbursement increases.
Dr.
for
Suzanne?
home health
No.
and assisted living.
Sure.
So both of the rate increases for home health and assisted living, that leaves out nursing homes. And I wanted to ask if that tied into what you said earlier about wanting to tie money to the quality of the facility.
Yeah, we'll continue to, Dr. Sullivan will continue to be working on cost, quality, access in our nursing homes. Obviously, the rate changed back last year with the help of CARES Act dollars, to be quite frank about it, about 4.2% increase. And then just last week, we eliminated that 3% as well. And so the rates have changed, and then we dealt with some assisted living, some home health care issues. In this budget that you'll see, I think it's, Ryan, 10 million and 2 million respectively. And 40 for DSPs, yeah. And so we've allocated more dollars, but this will be an ongoing commitment at the FSSA in terms of making sure that people can age where they prefer, and that it is at a appropriate cost and high value.
Rich with WTHR.
Afternoon, Rich.
Good afternoon, Governor. I'm sorry, I couldn't find my cursor.
I've got my cursor.
Outside the box a little bit here, we're 5 days out from one of the worst mass shootings in Indiana history and workplace. Is there anything in your mind, knowing now what you didn't know 5 days ago, that could have been done either legislatively or regulatory to minimize the loss of life? Is there any talk of getting into and fixing potential loopholes in Indiana's red flag law?
Yeah, I don't want to, the Lieutenant Governor and I have talked about this on a very personal level, and obviously the gut punch that we feel pales in comparison to what the families of those who have been lost are going through right now and will go through. This will leave a scar, both at the workplace and with the families. To get at your exact question, and our administration will be there. I've already made that commitment to those associated. Our commitment will be from now and forever in terms of people who need care during this time, and counseling, et cetera, both at the workplace and at home. These horrific events obviously are playing out right now at the local level, and I don't want to put words in I'll let them speak for themselves, both in the House and the Senate, but I don't think, just personally, I don't think that we can make policy in the next 48 hours that's worthy of this occurrence. And again, we're watching, Rich, this play out appropriate at the local level, and the issues that you've brought into question are being handled at the right place. Obviously, it's an issue for law enforcement at this time, both local and federal has been involved. But we'll continue to assist as we did on that regretful day.
Lindsay with WTWO.
Lindsay, afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Very good.
Good. So I just wanted to ask, how important was, making sure that we get more money to our teachers in this budget to you all during the planning process, given we had these 3 recommendations that you all took out from earlier this year?
Well, it was a priority, I think, for all of us, or we wouldn't have got there. And when I say all of us, I don't just mean on this stage or in the room right now with Chairman Brown and Mishler. This was a priority for our state to be able to, as I said earlier, seize the day. We found ourselves in a position to where we can keep up with needs. And sometimes, not just in regards to education, but I mentioned there have been some plans for some projects, state assets, that when you had questions, we were able to go get the study and say, we've done the work. Now we find ourselves in an opportunity to fund appropriately. And certainly that was the case when it came to teachers. We all read the report, and that's just, fact-based in black and white. Fortunately, we were able to be in a position again, not just because of where we are today, but because, in large part, because of how we got to where we are today, gives us confidence going forward to be able to sustain this commitment. But this is a partnership, local and state, as has been suggested. So we'll continue to do our part. Yeah, please.
I just want to note that certainly teacher pay was obviously a priority of all of ours during this session, but I know it was, it was making sure we took and we dealt with increasing state police pay, which we did, increasing direct service provider money that goes directly into their salaries, which we did, providing a stipend to our correctional officers who have had an extraordinary year dealing with the unique circumstance COVID has put on them, which we did. So, one thing about when you do a budget, you balance out all the priorities. Clearly, like we noted, education is 50% of the state budget. It's a high priority for us, and the biggest impact on a student's life outside of their parents is their classroom teacher. We fully appreciate that. But I also want to note that, it's about seeing the bigger picture as a whole, and we both address the education issue, but we certainly addressed issues around other things that are very, very important to our lives and our quality of life.
Just make a comment on that teacher priority as well. First of all, the speaker is absolutely right. There's lots of important things that we're trying to tackle all the time. But if you look historically, or at least not very far back, but a little back into the history, in 2019, we worked on funding public education and teacher pay in particular. And we added $763 million new dollars to K through 12 public education at that time, which at the time was historic high. Now we're over $1 billion this time, which again is a historic high. And to the governor's credit, in 2019, he added $150 million of that 763 to the post-96 pension, which had allowed about 2% of every school district's salary budget to be freed up. I think every school system, but maybe 5, were able to give teacher raises back then. It was fantastic news. But along with that, the governor put together this teacher compensation commission, and they've given us these recommendations, which we're trying to act on now. So this is a consistent effort over a course of several years to try and continue to work on this high priority for the state.
Yeah, and all the while not rob Peter to pay Paul, we got a fully funded Medicaid program. Come on.
Our final question is from Brock Turner with WFIU.
Afternoon, Brock. We're going to answer quick, Brock. These guys got to get back to work.
I know.
They're working overtime right now at the podium.
I do have a broadband question for the LG or whoever wants to answer here. So the $250 million that are coming from the federal stimulus, is that correct? What does that funding look like specifically, and will it be aligned with the program that was outlined in Senate Bill 377 with the Connections grants?
Yes, it'll be through the Next Level Connections grant. And a lot of so we will implement the legislative changes that have come about. We'll have that infrastructure with the grant program in place. Look to get that money out the door just as quickly as we possibly can. So we're pretty excited about, and I'm grateful to the General Assembly. I think there were some 18 bills that were filed this session regarding broadband. So clearly it's a priority. And then with the $250 million that was allocated or has been earmarked for broadband, it's a priority for this administration, a continued priority for this administration and the General Assembly moving forward. So we will look forward to making the changes we need to internally to be up and running in the OCRA, that Office of Community and Rural Affairs that administers those grants, and get them out of the door as quickly as possible so we can continue to connect Hoosiers in Indiana. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, we still got to post, vote, and sign, so we got a little over 24 hours to get that done. Thank you all for joining us today.
Shut it down.